What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I'm Philip Sessions, your host and public speaking coach. I've got Josh Payne here. He is an entrepreneur, people developer, opportunity maker, multi-industry investor, family man with 4 children. We were just talking about this, how he is super busy. Could totally understand that. I've got the one, but he's also a host of the More Than podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to get into that. I'm really excited. But the big thing we're going to talk about today actually is how to fight that fear of putting your message out. I talk about this a lot on social media and somewhat on this podcast about getting over that fear and just putting your message out because it's so important. Somebody needs to learn about it. But Josh is really going to help us dive into that today. So Josh, man, tell us a little bit more about yourself before we do dive into that.
Yeah. So, number one, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciated you reaching out and asking me to share my message. And I'm excited to get to the point of our conversation to where I can share the anxiety and the fears I had to get to overcome to share my message. And that candidly, I still deal with, honestly, as we speak right now. There's always a little bit of anxiety before I do any sort of podcast, whether it's one of my own or as a guest, right? But
Mhm.
that intro is just, dude, that's a bunch of fluff. That's a bunch of like stuff just to make me sound like really important and really cool. I like to tell people I'm just a normal guy who doesn't know when to stop. And I don't know when to stop taking the beating and like just relax. Right.
Mhm.
So it's interesting whenever, you have to create like, who am I and an intro for your podcast. And it's like, I'm just such a simple dude. I'm just a normal guy. I'm no different than anybody else. But it's like, hey, create all this extra fluff to make yourself sound really cool. I'm like, so uncomfortable, creating stuff like that. But I'm appreciative that I got a team of people around me who really push me to just be like, hey, go and do it. But besides like the razzle dazzle that Philip talked about in the beginning, I am just a normal guy. I'm a family man. I've got a wife. I've got 4 kids, 17, 14, 10, and 7. Girl,
Ooh.
boy, girl, boy. So it's interesting. We relive the same like arguments and conversations that our 17-year-old and 14-year-old have with our 10-year-old and our 7-year-old. So it's like deja vu every single day in my house. Um, Entrepreneur wise, I started off as a sales rep probably 10 years ago. I'll make a long story really short. Started off as a sales rep. I went and did in-home consultations for a company called Two Men and a Truck. It's a moving company. Absolutely fell in love with the model, absolutely fell in love with the brand, understood what it really meant and how impactful actually just the simplicity of moving someone's furniture was in that person's life. Moving is one of the most top 5 stressful times that anyone will go through in their lives. And I think it's number 3 behind divorce and death.
Mm.
So being able to realize at such a young age the impact that the simple service like moving had really met every need that I had from not only an entrepreneurial type spirit, but also just like the want to like genuinely help people, right? So from there, I was able to open up my very first franchise. That just parlayed into franchise 2, 3, 4, and 5, up to 9 franchises now. We've got like 140 employees across the country. We're in 5 different states, soon to be 6 different states, and we got a couple deals in the works. So she'll be opening up another 3 franchises January, February of 2023. But I've been able to do that, with the help of a team and with everybody I've surrounded myself with. I don't believe in saying I'm a self-made man. That's not true. I've been given a lot of guidance. I've been lucky at times, right? But it really goes back, Philip, to what I mentioned in the beginning of just not knowing when to stop taking the beating, right? Just wake up and get beat every day. And here I am, just still trying to make an impact in the world. So
Man, that's an incredible journey, and just seeing how you open up all these franchises, and what you were saying at the beginning about being this normal guy, super humble. Obviously, here I know you're not just saying that just to be humble or anything. And it made me think about Andy Frisella one time. At one time on his Instagram account, he had normal dude. I mean, this is a
yeah,
guy that's I'm sure he's probably close to being worth $1 billion if he's not worth $1 billion yet. And I guess at the time that's probably about 4 or 5 years ago, but still just this guy that has done so well in a lot of people's eyes. And he's just like normal dude. And he talks about that all the time. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just a normal guy that just has put in the work and never stopped, which really goes into like, that's what success is at the end of the day. Just putting in the work no matter what.
Yeah, that's all that it is. And I think that Instagram and social media has created this false narrative that
Mhm.
entrepreneurs think they have to live by, which which honestly really gave me a lot of the anxiety that I had about sharing my message and talking about the more than mentality, because I didn't feel like I lived up to that persona that you see 99% of like entrepreneurs on Instagram or Facebook have, right? With the Lambos and the private jets and like, this luxury lifestyle. It's like, that's actually not entrepreneurship. That's entrepreneurship. And like the real people that are doing it every single day and, going through that grind, like we understand that literally I'm no different. Like I don't have some special skill. I don't have like I didn't go to college. Oh, I did for like a semester, but I don't have like a special degree. I don't have like anything that that you can't develop through taking those beatings and just doing things
Mhm.
time and time again. I think it just goes back to like you said, it's just like being able to do the work every single day and being willing to admit when you don't know something, to be able to ask questions and to get there, because no matter what anyone tells you or what you see on social media in that false fake world, the most successful people, the Andy Frisellas, the Ed Milet's, the people that you see and like look up to that seem to be doing it the right way, dude, I've had one-on-one conversations with both those guys, and I can tell you they are no different than me. They are no different than you. They're no different than Joe Schmo down the street. They just have the ability to not stop. And I think that that's the
Mm.
separation that people that just don't understand, right? It's not
Yeah.
this the crap you see isn't real.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like that image you always see, or you see a lot of those two people trying to dig for the diamonds, and the one stops just an inch short of it, and the other one is still continuing to go. And eventually, you do hit those diamonds. It just takes time. You have to continue to try, and there's obviously nuances within all of that too. For instance, I think back to whenever I was started with fitness coaching. That's where I started my coaching career, and I've switched over to public speaking coaching. And man, I had that fight internally with myself, like, do I just continue to do this? And at the end of the day, I decided I've lost the passion for this, and I just felt like I couldn't create the impact that I knew I could create in life through the catalyst of fitness, or the vehicle rather, of fitness coaching. And so
Yeah.
that's where I made that shift. And I found that I can create more impact with this, and not just me literally creating the impact, but having others as well. And not to say that fitness is wrong or anything, but that just didn't feel like the vehicle for me. So that's one of those nuances I talked about, where maybe you do make that shift, and it's a shift. It's not a complete stop or anything. And sometimes we have to do that in life.
Well, I think what you're talking about is being able to notice when it's time to pivot and
Hmm.
make a change, right? I think that people like, what's the adage you see all the time? It's like, find what you're passionate about and, make a living around it and you'll never work a day in your life. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I wasn't really passionate about moving furniture. I just
Hmm.
never like, I'm not passionate about it now. What I learned was to find what I understood would be a good business model and what would meet like the financial requirements that I had at that time. And then create and frame my passion to whatever that industry or whatever that business was, right?
Mm.
And I think that all too often people get so stuck like in the planning stages and like the let me figure this out stage that you just never make any progress. And you don't realize that 10 years goes by really, really fast. So 10 years ago, you had, this idea of being an entrepreneur and you could just never, find your passion. And now you're stuck and you've got, kids and you got a wife and you don't have the ability to take the risk that you could have taken 10 years ago. And, it's a vicious cycle that I see people get put into. It's that when they figure out it's time for me to pivot, they figure out it's time for me to like go chase my dreams. They don't take action immediately. They sit and they chew on it for too long, and then life happens. Right? Then you have
Yeah.
liabilities. Then you have mortgages, and then you have kids' school clothes, and you got a car payment. So you quite literally cannot go out and like take advantage of a potential risk or opportunity. And understanding when you have to pivot and understanding like the insane speed you have to do it with, I think is an area that, if I were to like analyze, like, if you're like, hey, Josh, tell me what you're really good at. I'm really good at like pivoting and making changes and decisions really, really fast, almost
Mm,
to a fault at times. But, we could like, hey, we may have an idea one day as far as like a marketing plan goes. 2 days in, my marketing reps looking at me like, hey, we don't have enough time. And I'm like, I don't care. It's not working. We got to change it. Right. And that could be a fault for me at times because I'm a little bit impatient. However, I would say that more often than not, we're pivoting and we're doing it quickly and we're doing it to stay ahead to make sure that we're not missing our marks and that we're never sitting stale.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I think what you're saying is it's a very real thing and people need to understand it.
And I think corporate life has really groomed us to not be able to see that. I know with my corporate job, that's the case. I see these things. I was actually speaking with my manager about something an issue that happened. And I was just like, look, if we're not going to talk about this certain part of it, essentially the associate, and talk with them about a corrective action, and then there's no point in us talking. And he's like, well, we need to look at problem solving, and we need to look at the robot. Maybe we could do this, this, and this. And in my head, I've already went through those scenarios. I'm in
Yeah.
on this on a day-to-day basis where he's not. And I can already say I didn't explain it to him, obviously, but I'm like, these are the reasons why we can't do it. But I was able to work through that very quickly and make a decision that this is the direction we have to go. It's this or not these other things. Not that maybe later on we don't go back to something like that, or maybe we find out that it's not, but I already had made all those logical processes in my head, but he hasn't gotten there yet. And we see this too often in the corporate world where we, as the operator, if you will, the person that's in the nuts and bolts of everything, can see what needs to happen, but then you get stuck with corporate. And so you get in this mindset that in order for you to change, for you to pivot, you have to make a bunch of decisions. You have to go talk to a bunch of people, and all the moon has to line up and everything has to line up just
Yeah.
perfectly before you can finally make that pivot, rather than trying to do it. And then you find out as you go along, oh, wait, that wasn't quite it. Let's pivot a little bit more. We're going to course correct just a little bit. Okay. We're going to tweak here. We're going to tweak there. And that's entrepreneurship. It's about making a decision, going with it until you figure out we're about to hit a dead end, and either we need to turn around or just turn slightly, go down this other fork, whatever it is, and you continue to adjust as you need to.
Well, 1,000,000%. So, I always pitch to my team, like, do you want to be a Titanic or do you want to be a speedboat? Right.
Mm,
The Titanic ship itself, right? Ships in general, they're worth a crap ton of money. Well, guess what? There are luxury speedboats that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Right.
yeah.
So I'd rather be that luxury speedboat who can make it turn on a dime. Right. Boom. We're going fast and we're turning quickly, rather than be that giant ship where we have to like, slow and steady, and like, to make a change in our direction, it takes, a lot of time, and it's a very slow, monotonous, task oriented type thing. I'm not doing that. We're like a
Yeah.
speedboat. We're turning on a dime. We're changing course. And if we have to go back onto the original course, then we're going to go back. Right. And, outside of making moves in a quick way and decisions very fast, I think you also have to, as a leader, of your organization, whether you're an entrepreneur within a corporate world, America, or you're the entrepreneur or business owner of your own business, dude, you have to be able to say, hey, you know what, guys, I made a mistake. Whenever I said, let's make this pivot, I was wrong. Let's get back to what we're doing. And I'll be a little bit more cautious next time. And I think
Yeah.
that egos prevent people from doing that, which ultimately just equals like the end of either your career as an entrepreneur or your business as an entrepreneur.
Man, so true, so true. Now I do want to pivot here, and we've been talking about how to work through things, how to slowly make tweaks. And one of the things a lot of people struggle to work through, and they tend to pause themselves on and just contemplate, is getting on stage or speaking in front of people. So and I know you're at the beginning of this within your journey of getting on stage and sharing your message. And I think you're like 10 episodes into your podcast now.
Yeah.
How is that journey looking for you? Because I know we've talked about offline a little bit that you are scared, you're fearful of getting your message out there. And I've heard from other people that know you that you feel like you don't have value to bring, but anybody that just listened to this last 10 or 15 minutes can say, this dude knows something about business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So you have, I'll call it a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of fear to put that message out. So how are you working through this yourself personally right now?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So you hit the nail on the head. It's imposter syndrome through the roof. Um, when I originally understood that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and that I wanted to, change my family tree and create this new world for, my children and my grandchildren, everybody to come, I struggled majorly with realizing that it was okay to think like that. And that what I wanted was, it wasn't abnormal. It was normal, but it was abnormal in the world that I grew up in, right? I come from very humble beginnings. We were probably lower middle class. So when I would have thoughts about living in $1 million home and driving $100,000 cars and like going on the vacations and providing, having hundreds of employees and having a headquarters, like it was difficult for me to even verbalize that, even to my closest people, like my parents or you know my wife and my closest friends, because they kind of looked at me like, yeah, right, right. So
Mm,
the consistent, like the consistent yeah rights was the immediate, like the first like self-doubt type thing, right?
mm,
It took me a long time, and I think it was Andy Frisella who said you don't deserve people to believe in you until you do the work, right? The work comes before the belief. And it took me a long, long time to realize that. So as I was growing, my companies grew out of fear of failure, fear of people laughing at me, fear of people saying, "Ha, told you you couldn't do it." That's why I grew my companies, plain and simple. My wife and my kids and all that stuff was like second, and she'll probably kill me for saying that, but like my number one drive was these motherfuckers aren't going to look at me and laugh and tell me I failed, right? I'm going
mm.
to win. And I would create these little like false narratives in my head of like family members talking smack. Maybe they weren't, maybe they were, but like I would like create these weird scenarios like a
Yeah.
psychopath. But that was the drive, right? So I had this major fear of failure, and that's what drove the businesses. And once
Mhm.
I got to the point, right, to where I'm like, holy crap, like I know how to run a service-based industry. 2 minute a truck and moving is my core business. We're gonna have 11 or 12 of those by quarter one of next year. But I'm invested in other franchises. We've got real estate. I've got investments in other things. But at the end of the day, I still, when I look at my quote unquote portfolio, I feel like as if it's undeserving at times, right? Like, God, am I just lucky? So it is 100% imposter syndrome.
Mm.
The journey to getting my message out there, right? And it's like, why all of a sudden are you sharing this? And where did the more than mindset come from? It really came from me feeling extremely stale in what I was doing, right? I kind of felt like I would compare it to a video game. I'm like, I played this video game and I conquered this video game. Like, I'm really freaking good at this video game of service based industry ownership. I'm really, really good at it. Right. So to me, it's more plug and play. I've got everybody in place. And I'm finding myself kind of bored at times. Like, what am I supposed to do next? What is my purpose? I really went through a journey of struggling with that. And I knew deep in my heart that like what really got me excited was providing opportunity for other people and investing like my knowledge and things that I've learned into them so they could avoid the same mistakes and ultimately change their family trees like I was able to change mine. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I just didn't quite know how to do it. Right. I looked at podcasting like maybe I'd missed the boat. I was getting into the game too late, so that wouldn't be worth it. I'm like, hey, who's going to bring me on stage? Because I don't have a podcast. My book's not out yet. They're going to look at me like, who the hell are you? You're just, a Joe Schmo who happened to get lucky. Again, imposter syndrome. And I just happened to be sitting at a table with Doug Mitchell one time at an event we were at, and he just looked at me in the middle of a round table where we were providing feedback to some entrepreneurs, and he said, "Why do you not have a podcast?
Mm.
What are you doing?" He said, and I tell him all the time, and we kind of laugh about it. He said, "Turn the camera around, turn the camera around." And I thought, yeah, oh, whatever. I kind of rolled my eyes about it, but that's the only thing I could think about the next like 2 weeks. And I thought to myself, you know what? It is the most selfish thing of me to have this knowledge inside of me, to understand the trials and tribulations that an entrepreneur, especially in the service industry, will go through with like the types of employees we deal with, the types of managers you have to have, the grit, the determination. I am doing a disservice, and that is not what God put me on this earth to do. I was put on this earth to share this journey, to share this knowledge, and I'm actually not living up to what I'm supposed to be doing. So like I had to tell myself that, and I believed it. So I bought the mic, I got the lights, I'm like on the phone. I have no idea how to work the freaking board, and like talking to my media director. And I'm like, hey, I need you to like do some classes and learn how we do this stuff. I need it to look professional. We got to look good. And honestly, dude, the first time I sat behind a mic and did like the intro to the More Than podcast, I would have rather have been standing in the middle of a football field in front of 100,000 people, like naked, than be in my office by myself talking. I was
Man.
scared to death, and it probably took me 3 hours to put out a 12-minute message. And that's what people need to understand. Like what you see is it's the result of a lot of anxiety at times and a lot of doubt that people want to hear what I'm saying, right? But I'm super grateful for Doug, and those 3 words, turn the camera around forward, sorry. And just doing it. And at the end of the day, I think it goes back to what we've talked about a little bit, which is like, hey, make the decision and go. Right. When I made the decision and realized I was doing a disservice to others that I'm here to serve by not sharing my message, it was like, just like in the beginning of starting my business, I can't fail. I can't allow others to laugh. That's where I am now. I will not fail. I will serve others, and I will share this message, and I will speak on stages in front of thousands and thousands of people, because I genuinely believe that the more than mentality and the way in which people need to alter their thoughts at times is a life changer for so many people.
Man, that's an incredible story. And Doug Mitchell is an awesome guy. Really, really like him a lot and been following him here. I know we were part of Apex and everything. So Doug's definitely a solid dude. And he told me a little bit about that, just that part about just how he told you to turn the camera around. He didn't give me all those details. So it's awesome hearing the full story there. I'm sure there's a little bit more to it, but still awesome to hear that. But yeah, I hear so many things here. You had this on imposter syndrome. You were worried what people thought about you. You did like most people. You bought all the equipment.
Yeah.
I don't know if you sat on it for a little bit or not. It sounds like
2
you didn't
months.
sit on it.
I sat on it for
Okay.
2 months. 2 months. My
So,
wife's like, what a waste of money. What is all this crap sitting in your office?
oof.
Yeah.
That's hard to hear, especially when you hear it from your wife. Like, what a waste of money. And then 3 hours to record that first episode.
Yeah.
And not to toot your horn, but I mean, this is a guy for the audience that has had 9 franchises. He's got a wife, he's got kids, he's leading hundreds of people, he's having conversations every day. He's more successful than the average person. I'll put it that way. And I would say successful in a certain right as well. Obviously, we can go compare ourselves to Andy's and Ed's and say you're not successful, whatever. But you have a certain success level in life. Like you talked about, you've gotten over this imposter syndrome with what your family would think about. And that's what drove you to be this amazing entrepreneur. But now to go speak and you get handcuffed again almost. Your mind locks yourself down, but you're overcoming this by essentially finding that why. And I love that why of I'm being selfish if I don't do this.
Yeah.
I need to teach that next generation because yes, I've created success for myself and for my family. We're in a comfortable place. I've beat the video game, as he said, but now I need to put in the next video game, the 2.0 video game, and everything. So the next generation there, so you can go and try and conquer that game next. And I believe you will conquer that. And you've got so much value to bring. And we talked about right at the beginning of the podcast with all this business stuff. Just man, you're just spitting it out left and right. Just dropping so much knowledge. I got to be careful. I don't know why I keep doing that. Dropping bombs is what I've said it twice now on Facebook. I've got banned
Brad
twice.
Lee too much. It's Brad
Yeah,
Lee,
apparently. So apparently that's just something I keep saying. I got to get better at that. Anyways, so all of that just to, this whole journey you're on, and how you feel? It sounds like you're pretty excited about it, but how are you feeling about this journey now that you're starting to conquer that fear and that imposter syndrome?
I would say that I feel very much so like I felt 9 or 10 years ago when I started my first franchise, right? I feel fear, doubt, anxiety. I feel the imposter syndrome, but I also feel a high level of excitement, a high level of joy. Um, doing a podcast is much more mentally draining. Writing a book is much more mentally draining. Pouring into others is much more mentally draining than a lot of people would expect.
Mm,
I've been blessed to have a couple of people who have approached me and they're like, Josh, I'd love for you to mentor me. Right. And at first I was just, I probably blew 7 or 8 people off. I'm like, no way. I'm not doing that. I don't have the time, right? I made up all these excuses. But
mhm,
I feel as if I'm at the start of something really, really big and something really, really great that will be my legacy when I leave this earth.
mm,
Whenever I created my companies, my thought process was this is my legacy. When I die, all of these managers who I've moved forward and provided opportunity for and changed their family trees, I want them to go to my kids and say, hey, your dad was a badass. Your dad gave me this. Your dad helped me do this. That was my legacy, right? And it wasn't about the money and whatever my kids will have whenever I'm long gone. I think that my legacy will be different now, and I think that I'm at the start of generating a new legacy, a bigger, greater legacy for myself and for everyone that I come in contact with. And it solely is about the more than mentality and like I want people 50 years from now to be talking about that and for this to be understood on a very high level about successes and why it's so important to implement and understand in your everyday life, right? So
mhm.
that is now a part of like this thing I'm trying to leave behind. And I couldn't be more excited. Yet, looking like I feel like I'm standing at the bottom of Mount Everest sometimes, and I'm looking up, and it's a never-ending type thing. But I think that's entrepreneurship, and that's what anything worth doing is like. So,
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is for sure. No, man, you've had this awesome testimonial talk about the journey that you're on right now, the things you've overcame and everything. Maybe somebody's still kind of on that edge right now. They're just not sure. They're still kind of have that imposter syndrome. Well, Josh has done so much more than me, even though yes, I get it. He has imposter syndrome as well, but he he doesn't understand. Philip doesn't understand. I really haven't done anything.
yeah.
What would you say to that person?
I would say you need to take a look in the mirror and you need to look at those around you. Whether you have a wife, you have a kid, you have kids, you have parents, you have friends, you have family. And I would want you to ask yourself, what would you say to them if they thought the same thing? Right? As an
Mm,
encouraging, loving family member or friend, you would say, hey, turn that camera around, share your message, right? And I think that you need to you ultimately probably go through a realization process like I did, and that what you're withholding is a disservice to others, right?
mm,
You are not on this earth to keep information in your head and to not share it. You're not put on this earth to only generate money and to create jobs. You're put on this earth to provide people with knowledge and experience and to allow them to improve their lives through your experience. And when you're not sharing that and you're not providing that, you are quite literally not doing what God put you on this earth to do, period. And I would
mm.
analyze that and I would think to myself, is this what I want to be known for? If when I'm dead and gone, do I want people thinking of me as the guy who just did really, really well, or the girl who just did really, really well, or okay in my business? Or do I want them looking at me like, hey, look at how many people he helped by pouring his knowledge and experience into others? And then you just have to decide.
And then there's another question that they'll always ask, but I don't have anything to share. I have no value to give. What would you say to that?
I would say that's BS. I think that's just an excuse. That's it, right? I mean, I think there's so much you can share. I look back, when I was starting my entrepreneur journey, and I'm like, if I knew then what I know now, right? About like turning the camera around and documenting that journey, there's so much people can learn as you are beginning your journey or as you're learning your business or starting a new venture or even just like being a new parent, right? Like documenting that and sharing that as you go. I don't think that you need to like achieve the results before you share. I think you're going to
Mm,
get a lot more traction and you'll get people to believe in you and understand what you're trying to achieve by sharing as you go. Right. So if you're inexperienced or let's just say you just graduated high school, um, dude, I'll tell you, like my daughter, she's 17. She's going to graduate in May. She's going to enter the world of like my world, the business world, right? And we've had serious conversations about how is she going to document that and share it with the world because there are other 18-year-old girls and boys who have no idea what they want to do. They're searching to try to find themselves, and she's going to share her journey into like the business world. And what it's like to not go to college, and like the different types of situations she has to deal with compared to like what her friends are dealing with in college, right? So this is my 18-year-old daughter who has no social media, who has no idea what she's doing. It's like she's going to share that journey, right? So I would tell
Wow.
people like, if my 18-year-old kid can share her journey, you can, as a 25-year-old, 30-year-old, 50-year-old, you probably got a lot of experience and a lot of insight that you can share with somebody else.
Man, so good. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Josh, man, I've got one last question here to ask you. And honestly, I could see this being the message that you'd share. But if there's one message you could share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
No, this is easy for me to answer, and it's the name of the podcast, right? It's called More Than, and More Than, like I've mentioned, is a mentality. It is a way to trigger yourself to think differently in situations, in scenarios, about what you are and who you are to create the outcome that you want. Okay, let me give you an example. Whenever you go to McDonald's and you're a fry cook, you've got to figure out in your brain how to look at yourself as more than a fry cook at McDonald's. What are you actually doing? Well, you're actually providing lunch or food to somebody who's in a hurry. You're providing, I wouldn't say nutritious food to someone, right? But you are providing a service to someone in need at that time. So there's the more than, right? In my world, movers, all I do is pick up furniture and I put it down. No, you're more than just a mover. You are a life changer. You're creating a stress-free type move in one of the top 5 most stressful times of someone's lives, right? I'm just a
Mm.
stay-at-home mom. No, you're not. You're more than that. You're providing peace of mind for your husband while he's at work generating income for you and your children, right? And if people can understand that and take those 2 simple words and look at them a lot deeper, right? On the surface, more than sounds very like, I trust me, I know it sounds very corny, right? And I've
Yeah.
said that before. Like it's so corny sounding, but it's like ultimately, if you understand the more than and you search for the more than in times of distress or when you're trying to create framework for your team to understand the opportunities in front of them, you better be able to find the more than in that situation or you're going to really, really struggle. So find the more than no matter where you are in your life, figure out how to share that with others around you, figure out how to teach others to find the more than in every situation. And I think you'll find that you live a much more fulfilled life than what you would if you don't learn how to focus on that.
Man, that's an incredible message. Yeah, I'll definitely need to go check out that More Than podcast for sure. Josh, man, you've dropped so much value here today. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome getting to hear a little bit more about you, learn more about your story from what others have already told me and everything. And I know what you've shared about your journey to getting on
Yeah.
stages and overcoming that fear and imposter syndrome will definitely help people out, will resonate with them. But if people want to get in touch with you, just say, man, I really appreciate what you've told me, or just to see more of what you've got going on in your life, where can they reach out to you?
So Facebook, it's just my name, Josh Payne. You should be able to find me there. Instagram, I'm probably the most active, like in the DMs. It's the underscore Josh Payne. And then you can always hit the website. It's just thejoshpayne.com. There's links to the podcast on there. There's information about, just, everything that I do, if you're interested in having a conversation. But the one thing I would say is don't be shy. Hit me in my DMs, right? Like even with a simple question, with a simple, even if you think it's a stupid question, hit me up and ask me, right? There's no greater joy for me than just to answer somebody's question and know that I impacted their life that day. And Philip, like I appreciate you more than I can put into words right now for allowing me to spread the message and allowing me to, again, clear another hurdle in the anxiety of sharing my story. And I'm looking forward to talking again, man.
Awesome. Same here. I appreciate you coming on, man.
All
It's
right,
good to
dude.
have you.
Thanks.